They called it grief. She swore it was love. When 19-year-old Celia Monroe lost her mother and two sisters in a devastating highway collision, she didn't just lose her family, she lost the foundation of her entire world. In a single moment, the life she knew crumbled, leaving only one constant: her father, Marcus Monroe, a quiet, wounded man who carried his sorrow like an unshakable shadow. At first, their closeness seemed innocent. He would wrap his arms around her at night when the nightmares tore her from sleep. They'd sit together until sunrise, reminiscing about better days, clinging to the shared ache of their loss. He stopped showing up for work. She stopped attending her classes. The two of them became each other's whole world, two fractured hearts orbiting the same empty house, surviving only in each other's company. But soon, the boundaries blurred. He began deciding who she could talk to, what she could wear, and when she could leave the house. When she broke down in tears, he kissed her forehead and murmured, "You're my queen." And when he announced that he planned to remarry, to rebuild the family, something deep within her splintered. She didn't see a future stepmother. She saw an intruder threatening to take her place at his side. Then one morning, that intruder was found dead, stabbed in the bathtub. No signs of forced entry, no theft, just a bathroom filled with blood and silence. During her trial, the courtroom fell into uneasy stillness as the prosecutor read from Celia's diary, a disturbing record of a bond so suffocating, so warped, it made the judge visibly shift in his chair. But it was the final entry that silenced everyone. "I didn't kill her because I hated her. I killed her because it was the only way to finally escape him." Before we go further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss the stories we have coming next. Celia Monroe was just 19 when her world collapsed. A second-year psychology major with quiet ambitions, she had gone home that weekend for something joyful, her little sister's 14th birthday. The plan was simple. Her mum and two sisters would make a quick trip to visit their grandmother out of town, then come back in time for cake and candles. Celia stayed behind, trying to be responsible, buried in midterm notes. By Sunday morning, all three were gone. A semi-truck, heavy with cargo, lost control on a slick curve just outside Marietta, Georgia. The family's sedan took the hit head-on. Emergency crews said there was no time to brake, no time to scream, just an instant, and then nothing. 3 lives ended on impact. The funerals were closed casket. The air was thick with the kind of grief that has no words. And when the final condolences were spoken, when the last neighbor dropped off a casserole and the door shut for good, the Monroe house fell silent. Marcus Monroe, Celia's father, was never the same. He had been a steady man, a contractor who took pride in his work and kept a life of order. After the crash, he abandoned it all. The tools stayed in the shed. Jobs went unanswered. His meals went untouched. At night, he paced the halls until his steps became part of the silence, and in the day, he stared into nothing, as if hoping the walls might give him back his family. In the beginning, it looked like grief in its rawest form. People tried to help. Friends offered to sleep over so the house wouldn't feel so empty. Neighbors brought food they knew would go cold. But as the weeks blurred together, the visits grew fewer, until it was just Marcus and Celia, breathing in the same heavy air. They began sleeping in the living room, first in separate chairs, then on the same couch. Later, in the same bed. Celia would tell the police months later that nothing happened in those early days. But something shifted, slowly, quietly, without either of them speaking it aloud. Marcus started watching her life with unusual precision. He drove her to school every morning, waited in the parking lot until her classes ended, asked about every call, every text, every friend. It wasn't demanding, not yet. It was dressed as concern. "Just making sure you're okay," he'd say. But others noticed. Jasmine, her closest friend, once asked her flat out, "Why does your dad call you his person?" Celia laughed, brushing it off with a joke, but inside, She didn't know the answer. And the strangest part, she had stopped crying. Not because the pain had dulled, but because she felt needed. In the quiet of that house, she had become the center of Marcus's world. Every time she broke down, he would hold her so tightly it was as if letting go meant losing everything all over again. She didn't know if it was grief, guilt, or just the comfort of not being alone. But slowly, the two of them began leaning on each other in ways no one else could see, and no one could stop. 3 months after the funeral, Marcus came to her one evening with an announcement. He said he couldn't keep living like this, the way they'd been surviving, the two of them locked in a loop. He told her it was time to rebuild the family, time to heal. And then, he introduced her to someone. Her name was Eva. She was graceful, soft-spoken, and, like Marcus, a widow. The kind of person who seemed almost too polite to be real. And for the first time in months, Celia felt something she hadn't felt since the accident: jealousy. Eva Whitman had kind eyes, a gentle smile, and a voice that stayed steady no matter who interrupted her. She worked as a nurse at a small clinic in town and had lost her husband to cancer 2 years before crossing paths with Marcus. On the surface, she seemed like exactly what a grieving man might need: calm, nurturing, dependable. But to Celia, she wasn't comfort. She was intrusion, like a stranger stepping across a place too sacred to touch. The first time Eva joined them for dinner, Celia had made lasagna, the very recipe her mother used to prepare. Marcus complimented it, telling her it tasted just like your mum's. Eva smiled warmly and agreed. In that instant, Celia set down her fork and didn't take another bite. She began to notice little moments: Eva's fingers resting lightly on her father's arm, Marcus chuckling at something that wasn't her joke, tiny, harmless gestures to anyone else. But to Celia, they felt like theft, a slow erasing of her place in his life. She tried to convince herself it was just the grief talking, that it was natural to feel protective of what little she had left. But deep down, something sharper was taking root: possession. She'd already lost her mother. She'd already lost her sisters. And now, here was this woman, sitting in her mother's seat, holding the same hands that used to pull Celia close when nightmares came. It didn't feel right. It felt like betrayal disguised as kindness. Her days became quieter. She stayed home more, keeping watch, listening. One night, she stood outside her father's bedroom door and heard Eva's soft laughter from inside. The sound turned her stomach. Her fists curled in the dark and she couldn't bring herself to move. The next morning, she gave them both the silent treatment. By the 3rd week, Eva suggested family therapy, a way, she said, for all of them to heal together. Celia's response was sharp. "She doesn't belong in our grief," she told Marcus. "She didn't lose what we lost." That evening, Marcus sat her down. His voice was calm but final. He said things were changing, that Eva made him feel alive again, that he deserved another chance at happiness. Celia looked at him for a long time. Then she said quietly, "I thought I was your person." He didn't yell. He didn't even frown. He just stared at her with something like confusion, got up and walked into the kitchen. She watched from the hallway as he filled a glass of water, his back turned. He stood there for what felt like forever, and in that stillness, Celia understood. He had chosen already, not her, not the bond they had forged in the ruins of their family, but Eva. A few days later, Marcus announced their engagement. Celia smiled. She congratulated them. She even hugged Eva, coldly, briefly, and posed for a photo. But somewhere inside her, a piece of her had shattered. And no one, not even Celia, fully realized it yet. Celia didn't shed a tear when Marcus announced the engagement. She didn't plead with him to reconsider. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she smiled faintly and asked if she could be part of the wedding preparations. Marcus took it as a sign of emotional growth. Eva saw it as acceptance. To them, This was progress, proof that the wounds were finally closing. But beneath Celia's calm expression, something else was happening. She wasn't healing. She was retreating, hiding behind a mask that no one could see through. She played the role well, offered to help choose the venue, suggesting a quiet botanical garden just outside town, volunteered to design the invitations, even joined Marcus at the jeweler to select Eva's engagement ring. But when the dinners were over and the smiles faded, she wrote in her diary. The same diary that, months later, would be read aloud in a packed courtroom. Page after page, she recorded more than just events. She wrote down feelings, fragments of dreams where her late mother stood silently in the shadows crying, the moments she felt invisible, and one memory she never shared out loud. The first time she kissed her father after the accident. To her, it wasn't sin. It was survival. A desperate way to hold on to the last piece of family she had. Her words never painted Marcus as a villain. In her telling, he was her anchor, the only thing keeping her from drifting into nothing. And she believed that if he ever let go, she would disappear completely. As the wedding date approached, Marcus and Eva seemed more in sync than ever. Celia noticed little shifts, a glance, a shared smile, the way their private jokes lingered between them. One evening, she walked into the kitchen to see Marcus massaging Eva's shoulders, his touch familiar and unguarded. That night, Celia's diary entry was only one sentence. He touches her like he used to tend to my wounds. A few days later, Marcus left for an overnight business trip. Eva stayed at the house. Celia offered to make dinner for the two of them. They ate outside, under soft candlelight. Music played faintly from inside. Eva spoke about her late husband, about how grief had once felt like drowning. She told Celia she thought of her as the daughter she'd never had. Celia's smile didn't falter. She thanked him. An hour later, Eva excused herself, saying she felt lightheaded. She never returned to the patio. Toxicology tests would later reveal a sedative in her system, not enough to kill her outright, but enough to cloud her senses and slow her down. Combined with alcohol, the effects might have been delayed, creeping in unnoticed. At 3:17 a.m., a neighbour's security camera caught a lone figure dragging a long, bundled shape across the driveway. At 5:12 a.m., Celia appeared at the police station, reporting Eva missing. Her voice trembled. She told officers she'd heard nothing, seen nothing, that maybe Eva had stepped out and never come back. The search went on for 3 days. It ended at the edge of a pond, the same one where the Monroe family once picnicked every summer before the accident. Eva's body was found wrapped in plastic. Cause of death, strangulation. The rope matched one from the Whitman garage. There were no usable fingerprints, but wedged between Eva's stiff fingers was her engagement ring, as if she'd gripped it in her last moments. Marcus collapsed when detectives told him. Celia held him close, rubbing slow circles on his back, whispering, "I'm here. I'll never leave you." He believed her, for a while. But nothing buried stays hidden forever. Not when grief rots into possession, and possession bleeds into murder. The investigation stalled. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no direct link to Celia. But everything shifted one quiet Wednesday morning when a housekeeper cleaning her room lifted a loose floorboard and found a leather-bound journal tucked beneath it. It wasn't expertly hidden, almost as if somewhere deep down Celia wanted someone to find it. 217 pages. The first entry dated just 48 hours after the crash that killed her mother and sisters. The last written the morning Eva died. Detectives read it once, then again. There was no explicit confession, no sentence that outright admitted guilt, but the writing dripped with the unraveling mind of a young woman whose grief had fused into obsession. She wrote about how Marcus became her entire world, how sorrow blurred into closeness, how his decision to bring another woman into their lives felt like betrayal, not just of her, but of everything they had endured together. The tone darkened as the wedding drew closer. One passage stopped investigators cold. When I killed Eva in my mind, it felt like burying my mother again. Only this time, I decided who went into the ground. Prosecutors moved quickly. Celia Monroe was charged with first-degree murder. The trial drew standing room-only crowds. Marcus took the stand looking like a man gutted from the inside, hollow-eyed, voice flat. When the prosecutor asked if he had ever been aware of any inappropriate bond with his daughter, he glanced at Celia and said nothing. The silence hit the jury harder than any denial could have. News outlets pounced, headlines filled with insinuations and half-truths. The defense painted her as a broken soul, crushed under the weight of grief, spiraling into a moment of temporary madness. They offered the diary not as a smoking gun, but as evidence of a mind collapsing under trauma. Then came the moment that shattered that narrative. A forensic psychologist testified that Celia was not insane. She was deliberate, precise. She planned this, the expert told the court. She organised the wedding, suggested the venue, offered to manage the invitations. She didn't lose control. She maintained it until the very end. The prosecution's final blow came in the form of a video recovered from Celia's phone. Time-stamped 1 week before the wedding, the shaky footage showed her staring into the lens, voice low and steady. People say prison is hell, but compared to living next to someone who's abandoned you twice, prison is freedom. She paused, then whispered, "Once for Mum, now for her." The jury returned in just 6 hours. Guilty, 35 years, no parole. When the verdict was read, Celia didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She turned to her father and gave him a smile that was neither warm nor mocking, just finished. At sentencing, a reporter called out, asking if she had anything to say. "He took everything from me, then tried to move on. Prison didn't break me. It freed me." Marcus was never charged, but within weeks he vanished from public life. Some say he lives in a small Midwestern town alone. Others claim he visits her once a year, sitting in the visitor's room without touching the phone. No one knows what they talk about. The journal remains sealed by court order, deemed too disturbing for public release. But one final entry, leaked before the restriction, has never been forgotten. "I didn't kill her because she loved him. I killed her because he might have loved her more than he loved me."